Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and we are back with Kris Krustangel, Vice President of Business Development at Saluda Medical. Last week we got into a little bit about Kris's history, how he found the industry, and how he started in the industry. In this episode, part 2, we're going to get deeper into how Kris sees operating in this space, how he sees leadership, how he sees performance, and also how he's able to manage it all. You know, how he balances his personal life with his professional life, and what he believes in that allows each and every person to be their best and show up as their optimal self. So again, as always, thank you so much for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Happening. Or in my situation, a lot of my top performing territory managers have teams of clinical specialists that work with them and report to them.
Yep.
I mean, they got to have some of those conversations with the people on their team too, to grow them and really, even though they're not a manager, like a business manager, they still have this, kind of responsibility to help their team. And so I think empathy with the customers and the ability to really drive these kind of more difficult conversations and be able to manage that appropriately, create a lot of momentum and inertia and success with these top performing territory managers.
Now, just, as much as you can share, give us somewhat of an example of what driving a crucial conversation looks like.
Sure. So, I mean, you have I'll start with someone on your team because that might be a little bit easier, but
Yep.
You have someone who reports to you or provides support to you in your individual goals. They aren't performing the way that you want them to perform, but the speed of the business too. That's the other thing I got to take you can't take for granted is like a manager should have time to deal with the development. A sales, they're busy to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it may be 8:00 by the time they get home and now they have to coach somebody. And so,
Right.
One, they got to find the right time to do it. And two, they got to sit down and say, hey, Jim or Joe or Sally are like, hey, this is how I need you to work in this role, and have that conversation with them, because maybe that individual doesn't see it the same way. And maybe they thought they were doing a great job, or maybe they're frustrated with the feedback that they were getting from you. It's being intentional about having a conversation that changes the trajectory of performance. And in this situation, someone who supports them on their team, and really it's not being like, I don't like you or I don't like what you do, but talking about it really objectively. Like, our goal is to sell 5 million this year. Mm-hmm. Right now we're on pace to sell 3 million. Mm-hmm. If you could do X instead of Y, we could get closer to 5 million. Let's talk about those things. Mm-hmm. And I think bad reps don't even know it's a problem. Good reps see it, but they rely a lot on their managers or somebody else to kind of like do the work for them. Mm-hmm. And then the best reps I work with know that there's responsibility. Like I said, they're driving the car. You're driving the car and you have a responsibility to kind of act and be a leader for their people. Now, that's an example of obviously someone on their team. Right. With a physician, it could be the same thing, because, there have been many situations I've been in, my team have been in, where you walk in and you've got so much experience. Just like cases, right? So my top reps may see 1,000 spinal cord stimulator trials, and they may work with a physician who's seen 10 or 20. Right. And how do you manage that conversation in the moment when the physician who's doing 10 or 20 is doing a good job, but they could be doing a great job with some critical feedback? Gotcha. And where does that conversation happen? Gotcha. Do you do it in the operating room with the staff around? Like, maybe depending on the personality, or, do you try to have that one-off discussion with them? Mm-hmm. And there's two parts that I think I believe are really important with that. And then we can move on, Samuel, is like, one is, it has to happen because it improves performance, right? It helps this individual. But I've learned over my career, physicians really appreciate when you're authentic. They may not agree with you. I don't want to set you up. If you're listening right now, you start, just non-filtering yourself. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. You have to have the awareness. People out of
a job here, Kris. What's going on?
Yeah. I listened to the podcast and I went the other direction. But I'm not saying that. You need to have the awareness to know when you know what you know is right, but they really appreciate you challenging them, and maybe not in the moment, maybe not in a day, but over time. I mean, my strongest relationships are the most difficult conversations I've had with physicians.
Wow,
because I've been like, I just don't see it how you see it. I see it a completely different way. Here's why, and let's go with it. And over time, I think that's differentiated me or these top reps, right? Because they know, like, they have their best interests out. They're willing to like sacrifice maybe their relationship to give them feedback that's critical. Gotcha. And I mean, you just can't replace that type of momentum when you create it in these relationships by having these critical conversations.
Gotcha. So really having that bold approach. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what it's kind of boiling down to, having that bold approach. That's good. That's really good. So what about some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things that, reps need to know they should not be doing? They need to be more mindful of.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is how they create their plan for success. And so, generally, I don't know, we have quarterly quotas, right? I know some people have monthly, some people have yearly, but the biggest pitfall I see is this like real lack of effort around preparing to succeed. And it's just like, well, I've got some cases next week, or I've got some good things going with Dr. So-and-so, but it's more about really great for us. Like, you need to do so many trials and implants. Who are the people that you think might do that with you, right? And how are you going to help those physicians, find those patients, or, give them the resources or educate them? And so I think the pitfall that I see is not enough time or granularity or specificity at the beginning of quarters or years to create a plan, like a real plan. And then this is the second part, is to communicate that plan to the people that are involved. And so there's really, for the way our business is, you have a territory manager, you have clinical specialists, and then you have your regional business director. I mean that our regional business director knows their responsibility. I know that the clinical specialist knows their responsibility. And then like you go back to best reps, the best reps will reach out to me and be like, hey, Kris, you're doing this for me this quarter. I'm like, got it. Like, I love it. I love that. Right. You've got a plan. Like, I love it. Like, let's go execute together. And when I don't see that, again, a lot of pause, a lot of question, because you're kind of setting yourself up to fail if you don't put in the time to really plan and execute on those increments.
Yeah. Proper preparation. I like that. Yep. I like that. Okay. Now let's jump to leadership, back to leadership.
Sure.
I mean, you've been a leader for a long time, Kris, so you have a lot of experience. What makes a great leader? What are the top qualities? Same thing that you kind of give us for the reps. Give it to us for the leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I'm humbled by being asked that question, because I'm still not there yet. I'm on my path, so I'll tell you what I've learned thus far. I think more so than ever, being authentic matters. Going through COVID and all the unrest of where we are, nationally in society, like, I've been as authentic as I've ever been with my team. I like to say been courageous at times to say what I'm really thinking and be out there. And the response has been overwhelming. Positive, right? Because this is not the time, this is specifically not the time right now, but even in normal operation, it's not, you shouldn't not be anything but yourself with the people that you're working with. I think I trust and believe in the people that have led me when there's authentic, as they admit mistakes. They say they're sorry. They, realize that they may view things different. Maybe they overreacted. Maybe they underprepared, and they say those things.
Right.
And I just think being authentic as a leader is a critical component that will never hurt you. It may scare you, right? It may scare you to be like, oh man, should I say that? But I don't think it'll ever hurt you or your brand as you build forward to be a leader in the space. And then the second thing that I really think about, going back, we've mentioned this a few different times, is the growth mindset. Is the idea that you're continuing to invest in yourself and make yourself better. And that can be, again, this podcast. It could be, online resources. It could be executive education. I know a lot of people have gone back, got their MBAs. A lot of, medical device companies, pharmaceutical companies create a pathway for that. Yep. Take it, invest in yourself. Yep. And because as a leader, I mentioned when you asked me about the regional business director and like the area vice president, like, I'm always trying to look further and further down the road. Like, a CEO is probably looking out 5 years, right? Well, in order to even look that far in advance, you have to be innovating yourself. You have to be growing yourself. You have to be seeing things that you are going to do different tomorrow than you did yesterday. And the only way you can do that is by educating and really trying to be focused on growth. And so growth mindset and authenticity, I think, are, in my world, two of the most critical components of being a successful leader who's going to continue to have success in the future.
Excellent. That's excellent. And then with what's going on right now with COVID, I mean, it comes up in almost every conversation. What have I mean, really, what's been the biggest challenge that you've seen, maybe for your reps and you as a leader, and what's been the best way for you to manage it?
Oh, I think we all quickly learned that we were, generally like kind of in this habit or this flow of business. And we just made these small little increments of like getting better. And then the bottom just fell out underneath us. Right. I mean, I remember there was 4 or 5 weeks when we literally weren't doing any cases across the entire country. And that's unheard of. Like
that's
for
crazy.
15 years, that's just like, and what do you do? I mean, are we going to have a job? Are we going to have a product? Are physicians going to have practices? Are patients going to, I mean, and so what I learned is that it all goes back to something that I try to think about a lot, which is I still feel the best when I serve other people. And I think that the opportunity for our reps was to be like, okay, I know the situation isn't great, but like the building's on fire or, there's a flood. Like, how do I run to this and help? Like, what can I do to help? And I don't know. I remember in the beginning, like literally back in March, we had all these calls like, okay, what are all the different, we had so much enthusiasm for all these different ideas. Some of them were terrible. If I told you what they were, you'd be like, what? But you know what? I applaud us for effort and intent of trying to do the right thing. And then we refine that over time. And so what I learned is that we need those positives.
So you've had quite a stellar career, Kris. And we've talked before and you're always traveling, you're always doing things. The audience got to know, how do you manage it all? I know you have 3 kids, you have a big family, you have a busy life. I mean, what's your routine and how does it all play into family and everything else you're doing?
Well, obviously, I mean, I have a great support system. I got to say that, especially if my wife listens. She's amazing. She's remarkable. And that's a huge part of having that around you. I think we all have busy lives. I mean, again, mine might be different than yours or someone else that's listening. I think the biggest thing that I've learned over my career is that you have to have self-care. Like you really have to not just invest in the academic sense of learning, but you have to take care of yourself. You have to sleep right. You have to work out. You have to be aware of what you eat and how it affects you. I mean, how much you drink or how little you drink. I mean, all those things are very real to me. And Jocko Willink, if anybody's ever heard that, he says discipline equals freedom. I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, I have committed almost on a daily basis to have some form of exercise. Like I've got a kettlebell off of the side here right now, like in between. I'm serious. Like I have to be that person that keeps it committed because otherwise I lose that. And that self-care is what provides me the energy and the clarity I need to be successful. I think at the beginning, and I do think this is a pitfall, Samuel, which is you're kind of getting at, is like, you just have to outwork everybody. Right. I have to do that too. Don't get me wrong, but the best versions of my work rely on me investing in them. So again, like I said, sleep and eating, I mean, meditation, yoga, like I'm no joke. Like there are ways that you can invest in your body and your mind that make you perform better than when it matters. Cause let's think about it like this. So my schedule or someone's listening, I mean, I could spend 2 real days before I have maybe 30 minutes of really important interaction, right, with a customer. And so do I treat every hour of the day the same? And I just throw myself at it and just grind and grind and grind? Or do I try to build myself in a position where I like kind of peak, like the best, most rested, fired up, you know what I mean? Appropriately caffeinated version shows up for that 30 minutes.
Caffeinated, right.
And I mean, I'm intentional about it. I think about it. I thought about this recording today about how can I get into this peak state by the time we talk? Because I want to give the best versions of myself when it matters the most. And you can only do that by being aware of yourself and really trying to invest in it over time. So a great question.
So let me ask you this then. What does it actually look like? I mean, give us a day where you've incorporated a workout, you've incorporated meditation. What time do you normally get up and take us through the day?
Yeah. I mean, it really depends if I'm leaving or staying. I've been staying a lot more in the COVID world. There's at least a 15-minute workout every day. I try to do it before all the kids wake up because I have 3. If you have kids, you never know. So I keep inching my morning up earlier and earlier. I try to stay not before 6. I like to not get up before 6. That's a thing for me. I do like to sleep. So, but I hit it first thing in the morning. I have a cup of coffee, by then a kid has appeared usually. It's by like 6:30 and I try to be present with them. I try to enjoy them because that fills me up too, right? Sure. To be around them and be really participatory. I try really not to get into work until about an hour and a half after I wake up. Okay. And so if it's still quiet in the house, I may throw in a little meditation, just 5 minutes. I'm not a 30-minute transcendental meditation. I don't need that. I just need like 5 minutes to like collect my thoughts and my breath. And then by 7:30, the day is be gone. Like, personally and professionally, if I'm home, it is out of the races. If I'm on the road, for certain, I'm, grinding all the way to the night. I will also say though, that in the afternoon or, sometime before dinner, I'm trying to take a little bit more time to pause, maybe pick up a book or listen to a podcast, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And that's partially, I guess, if, you're in your car going doctor, you get that time that I don't really usually have that time. I usually have someone that's around me all the time. And so I know that I need another like afternoon kind of breather. Like I said, podcast, book, maybe a nap if I'm in the right place, which is rarely happening. I'm being honest. The data on naps is strong. You look into it for me.
Really? Okay.
And so if, especially if I need to get into that evening, I have a dinner presentation, I have critical, that just gets me ready to go with my second half of the day, which again, could go late into the evening till midnight, et cetera. So just being intentional with that process and trying to invest into it.
Excellent. One thing that I've seen a lot of people in this type of field, leaders especially, they have like a hobby or something that they're really into outside of the family, outside of work. I see sports behind you there.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the thing, or is it something else?
It probably is the thing. I mean, like I said, I'm an avid learner, so I'm trying to learn and participate in everything. I love sports. I went to the University of Washington, so I'm a diehard Husky.
Sure.
Love to see all the sports. What's going on? Not very good right now, which is very, very troubling to me. All the professional sports in Washington State, and I love it too because my oldest is 12, so he's in a space where he likes that as well. Yeah. But I've got 2 daughters, so I'm also learning about painting more, and someone's into making bracelets, and so I would say that. Probably because of the fullness of my life, my hobby is my kids. I mean, it really is. So whatever they're into, I kind of follow and try to do my best, again, to be present and to be participatory, not just like standing there on my phone, but that's fun for me. Like I said, we got a treadmill recently, so I'm running with my son. We're having competitions. Like my daughter literally got a bracelet set over the holidays. So she was showing me how to put them together. And that's a hobby for me. And I love it. It's so much fun.
Right. How important is it, you would say, for people that want to develop themselves, especially within their company? How much time should they be spending understanding what goes on outside of their role?
Ooh, that's a great question. As much time as possible. I mean, I had an old leader, Alan Meacham. He's the vice president of sales at Nalo at this point, say a line of like as much time as necessary, but as little as possible. And so that there's a sweet spot where you don't need a double click into I don't need a double click into finance or how we, audit our books. But I will say over my career, I did reach out and try to have a special project with almost every department except for like regulatory and finance, I think. But I was in marketing, I was in HR, I was in sales ops, because I wanted to learn about the business. Now, why did I do that? One, because I'm just naturally curious. I mean, that's just truthful. I'm always like, how do we do this? As a leader, though, you find out really quickly that you have to align stakeholders to make better decisions. And sometimes going back to empathy, understanding their perspective and what they care about will create more success in what you're trying to create. So I did it because I like to understand where they're coming from, what they need from these decisions. And so I say, do it, put your hand up. And if you can take a special project on in HR or operations, whatever, do it. I mean, just learn, just keep learning.
Got it. And in that same vein of learning, you're an avid reader.
Yep.
What are the top 3 books you're reading right? Well, actually, no, let me rephrase that. What book are you reading right now? And what are your top 3 that you suggest for everyone listening to that they need to read?
So I'm reading, I think it's B 2.0. I mean, it's not right. It's Jim Collins's old book. That's a new book he wrote, From Good to Great. Okay. So he just did a re-release of that. It's Entrepreneurship 2.0, I think is what it's called. Great book. I mean, it's a really unique book because he wrote it, I don't know, the original one 15 years ago. And so he's got updated text that's like highlighted. He's like talking in a 2020 voice back to his 2005 voice, and just a really cool perspective. Okay. And so I think that is a great book. I really enjoyed it. I don't always read long books. I use something called Blinkist, which is kind of an abbreviated, Cliff Notes. And I have to decide before I'm going to invest like in a full book. This is a book that I've invested in. I've really enjoyed. And I would say you said top recommendations, right, Samuel?
Yep.
The number one I always go to, and there's probably 3 copies behind me, is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Wow. Okay. All right.
And that's like maybe 100 years old now. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's 80 years old. Yeah. And I have my kids reading it, and like anybody else I can ever talk to reading, because I think anything that can stand the test of that many years and still be relevant says a lot about the principles.
Sure.
shocker, principles are a lot about empathy,
Right.
Understanding people and understanding
Right.
their needs when you try to express your problems.
Right.
So I put that very high on the list. There's so many good books. I like the influence books a lot, or like some of the Daniel Pink books. I'm more like an author guy. So like Seth Godin, Daniel Pink, great books that I think you can apply pretty much anywhere in your careers. So I'd probably go with those two authors, I would say, at the top of my list, with Dale Carnegie. He's the OG. So.
Okay. The OG. All right. Are you part of Masterclass? You listen to Masterclass at all?
I've done one Masterclass. I haven't gotten there. I stared doing LinkedIn Learning a lot. I didn't realize how deep and rich that content was.
Yeah.
And so I've been looking at LinkedIn Learning, Coursera.org. If you know Coursera.org, that's kind of a culmination of all the internet virtual classes and across the country. And then Blinkist. I rely on Blinkist quite a bit.
Okay. So Seth Godin and Daniel Pink, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is great. This is good stuff. Any other message you'd like to leave for the audience?
There's a lot, but I'll try to condense it to this. When you're flying on a plane, they say put the mask on yourself before assisting others. I really do believe if you want to be your optimal self, and you look at, all the greatest athletes, the greatest leaders, if you dig in, you will look that they've been very intentional at that self-care, right? And trying to optimize their performance. And it's kind of counterintuitive, because when you get these roles, you're like, I'm just going to grind. And again, that's part of it. But in order to, run on the treadmill at 12, you got to prepare at 2 sometimes. And my point being is you got to take the breaths. You got to find the things that kind of fill you up, and do it and be okay with it. Don't feel guilty about it. I mean, that's another thing. You're like, oh, I could be spending this 10 minutes doing X. Well, yeah, you could, but you're not going to be doing it very well. Right. So stay committed to that. And if you do, I think you'll maximize what you can create, and the value and the joy that you're going to get doing what you do.
Excellent.
What a great episode with Kris Krustangel. I loved how he really went into how he keeps it all going, from the authors he loves to the routine he sets up, and to the value of not feeling guilty about how you spend your time in order to keep you consistently performing at a high level on a regular basis. So again, thank you all for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. If you're someone out there that's looking to get into this space, whether it be pharmaceutical sales, medical device sales, biotech sales, genetic sales, then you need to visit evolveyoursuccess.com or find me on LinkedIn under Saluda Medical, and let's have a conversation so we can get you into a program that can help you get the position that you want. And if you're someone out there, you're a leader, and you're looking for ways to develop your teams, your sales teams, how can you get better access to customers? How can you get them to go from meeting that right customer and then getting them to actually close the deal and utilize that product, utilize that service? Then again, visit evolveyoursuccess.com and visit the sales builder page. Go improve sales performance right from the home page and get access, schedule a call, or go ahead and find me on LinkedIn, Saluda Medical, and let's have a conversation and get you to where you're trying to go. Whether you're an individual sales professional or a team leader that's trying to get your team to the next phase. Thank you as always for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. We do everything we can to have amazing guests that get on here and give you great insights into how they lead their careers, how they lead the teams they work with, and how they get into the industry. So make sure you tune in next week for another episode. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive-level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.